play 1b3. He didn't get a bad position, but he didn't get an advantage in the first game. This time it feels like he'll be more direct, more ambitious, and we're about to have liftoff.
Stay hydrated. They get their drinks next to them. It's going to be a sweaty fight between these two players, depending on the opening that we get. Will it be, again, a solid draw, or will we have more? 1e4? That gives me hope. It's the Sicilian.
Sicil for the kill, and Magnus, not just the Sicilian, playing pawn to a6 on this last move. That is ultra provocative, doesn't fight for the center at all. It allows white a free hand. It's a bit of a move order trick. It's kind of asking white to open the middle of the board, because then black has much more options. But I've nearly never seen Magnus employ this one, and I think already the frustration's building. He doesn't want another quiet battle. He wants fire on this board.
So rare at the highest level that I often forget its name. I believe it's the O'Kelly variation of the Sicilian. It can transpose into other lines, because in the Najdorf Sicilian from the black side, you often include this move a6 with the pawn going up to d6 next. So just asking Wesley, do you know all the variations? Do you know what transpositions can occur? Maybe I can catch you off guard. And Wesley, he is spending some time here. He said he needs to avoid time trouble against Magnus Carlsen. I think playing d4 in the center right now is a good way to avoid that long-term pressure.
And it's so important to not burn too much time in the opening, because the critical moments will arise, the position will get messy, mistakes will happen, and the player who has those extra seconds in those moments, that's often decisive in this one. But Wesley does take the decision finally after spending a bit of time with that second move surprised by Magnus. He does take out the bishop to e2. With the black pieces in the O'Kelly, it's about getting that d5 break in early on. That d pawn from d7 moving 2 steps ahead. Is that something that Magnus is already thinking about? Or would you say his approach should be to start developing first before a central break?
Normally you want to get the pieces out, and I think this last bishop move from Wesley So might throw Magnus off. As you say, normally black wants to break open in the center very quickly. You're kind of waiting for your opponent to commit and you react accordingly. But white hasn't committed anything. White is simply developing. White's next move is natural, obvious. If black does nothing, white will just castle his king. So certain pressure on Magnus Carlsen right now. If he lashes out a move such as d5, black's queen would be forced out early. I think that might backfire. So I'm expecting a pawn push here, or black's knight to come out, maybe the queenside knight. Either way, Magnus, he's the one to launch the surprise. The O'Kelly, I must admit, I've forgotten that name too. It's that rare, as you mentioned, Robert. But OK, now we're headed into more traditional waters. An open Sicilian, potentially, depending on Wesley's next move. He pauses. Will he take with the pawn? Will he take the pawn with the queen? Will he take it with his knight? Lots of options here for Wesley So.
And in standard Najdorf territory, we see white capture this pawn with the knight, and black's pawns are in normal positions. He does, in fact, take with the queen here. So if the black knight steps out to c6 to attack the queen will slide back in front of the dark square bishop. And I have to say, this kind of reminds me of some games that Magnus has played from the white side of this opening. So Wesley saying, you can do it, I can do it too.
That was his kind of mantra in the previous game. He did mention, Wesley, that these two had a battle in the previous game, but with colours reversed from 2 years ago. So he's just copying Magnus's opening. He just says, OK, you often play 1b3, I'll play b3. You played the English opening a few years ago against me. I'm playing it this time. And now a variation, as you mentioned, Robert, that Magnus is quite renowned for, as the white queen most likely going to step back now, either to e3 or to the d3 square.
Following the best player on the planet when it comes to opening preparation, perhaps not such a bad idea, but really interesting there. The memory that Wesley has about all the games that they've played, even years ago, and just how they look at openings at the very top level.
e8, this is a situation where only Magnus can play for a win, and he's going down this line.
And that's so interesting because Magnus waited for the moment when Wesley's king was at the edge of the board, so not giving enough time to actually come to that f2 square to control all the penetrating squares on the e-file. Only after Wesley played king h2, Magnus goes on for the rook pawn endgame. Is there hope here for black? We always talk about the Magnus touch. Can he create something in this one?
It's definitely possible. If anyone can, Magnus can. He squeezed water out of a stone more times than we can count. And this last move is really classy. It's actually a pawn sacrifice. Black giving away a pawn. White can actually take twice on this square, but the black king is coming. It's all about rook activity. Black's rook on an open file, white's not. And king activity, the king's coming in.
And it's not just about open files, it's not about open ranks. This is what makes Magnus Carlsen perhaps the best endgame player of all times. His pawn structure is ruined on the king side. Double isolated pawns, the f file, and isolated pawn, the h file. But white is sitting passively. The rook on d2 needs to sit there on the second rank. Otherwise, black gives a check, wins a queenside pawn. If it leaves the d-file, the d5 pawn will be loose. And now king g6, king f5, that black king is entering the fray. And if white's king slides on over one square to f2, the black rook slides on over to h3, winning the h4 pawn.
Wesley's going to go down a pawn. It's urgent. If black gets one more move, two more moves, as you said, Robert, if the black king activates, it's over. So he tries to shut down the entry points for the black king. Black's king now has no way to sneak into the white position. I think a really important move there from Wesley. So, and Magnus, can he up the pressure? The problem is he's maximized. The black rook is perfect. The black pawns on the queen side cannot really advance any further. His other pawns are stuck. So it's all about the black king and inroads. He needs a route in.
But he is winning a pawn in this position, like we were talking, right? The rook slides back to e5. There is no healthy way to keep that f5 pawn in the position anymore.
No, there isn't. He can go rook e5 right now, but I don't think he will. He goes king f8 because rook e5 isn't going anywhere. It attacks two pawns at the same time. There's only one white rook to defend with it. I love that move, king f8, because what's Wesley's move going to be? If he goes king f2, he may just lose the h pawn, and that's a really valuable passer because it's not doubled f pawns. That f5 pawn is probably going to be lost eventually. Wesley's got to move, and he's down to 20 seconds.
Wow, and a difficult endgame to defend as well.
I love it. I think this might be zugzwang, and that's a term we say when every move for white worsens his own position. The white king had to step across, but now the black rook goes back, and the pawn drops with check. So even better, why not just give your opponent the move, pass, and they worsen their own position. Wesley's now desperately trying to break open lines, trade off pawns on the queen side. Will Magnus say yes? He doesn't need to decide yet. He does trade a set of pawns. I'm a bit surprised. Maybe he could have kept some tension there, but Magnus now is up a pawn. And can he convert? This is the question. Wesley defending heroically so far, but it's only Magnus who can win this one.
Do not hurry is the theme of this endgame. That king move, king to f8, just making Wesley's position worse. How quickly he's able to create his chances in this endgame, that's taken me by surprise. And we see now Wesley trying to build a kind of a fortress, just relying on the fact that Magnus has the doubled f-pawn, which gives him hope to hold on to this endgame.
A big problem for Magnus Carlsen, all of his pawns are isolated, so you can't get a connected pass pawn situation. He moves his king into the center. This endgame reminds me of the one against Gukesh, which Magnus was able to outlast the junior super strong Indian player in, but he's going in with his rook. He's going to target the c-pawn as well, but Wesley's getting active, not sitting passively to defend.
That is so important, and now both players are playing on seconds on the clock. Magnus has this amazing ability to recognize equal but difficult to defend endgames and combine that with his sheer will to play on till the end, to just play for a win till the very end. And that's what makes him the greatest player of all times when it comes to endgame. But will it be enough in this one, with Wesley getting active?
Ooh, big question. Wesley's king now doing the right thing, marching up the board, forcing the black rook away. But the king's getting driven back now. This one is so close between being a draw and a win for black. Magnus, he's trying, he's probing, but Wesley has all the answers so far. This activity, look at the white king going back where it came from. I think Wesley's defended this perfectly. Under 10 seconds, Magnus now, he might have lost control.
And
White's king is coming in.
Yeah, he's using his king as a weapon, and there could be some mating nets around the black king. The rook on a7 makes sure that the black king cannot jump up the board. But now we're going to have pass pawns on opposite flanks. Black already has established pass on the b-file. White's going to win the h5 pawn. It's going to be a pawn race.
And there's still one extra pawn, but it's all about who gets those pawns moving first. It looks like Magnus's pawn is closer to queening than Wesley's.
Magnus's pawn is closer, but black's rook is trapped on the wrong side. You always want rooks behind pass pawns. White's rook is keeping that black b-pawn under lock and key. And why has he allowed the black pawn to run? His king could have stepped across.
His king could have stepped across, but he was worried about black pushing the b-pawn and delivering a check. But right now, can't that pawn go all the way up to f2, and the rook will go to h1 to stop the pawn? It may sacrifice itself, but black's pawn cannot be stopped.
Black's making a new queen. Magnus Carlsen is going to win. Wesley forgot to keep that pawn under watchful gaze, and it's game over. A couple of checks, spite checks. Magnus's king is going to dance easily out of them. And now just prevent the white pawn promoting. We see a check first of all, and Wesley resigns.
Wesley resigns. Magnus Carlsen does Magnus thing in the endgame, takes the point, takes the lead in the finals with the black pieces. What a win that was.
It was reticent play from Wesley So, and Magnus Carlsen pounced. He senses it when his opponent doesn't want to strike. Wesley had to do it earlier, and Magnus is the first to deliver a huge blow in this final match.
He does deliver that blow